Hence, they create city boys movement. The city boys in your today's world were what was called the warrant chiefs in yesterday's world. So the boys you see today as city boys, they were the warrant chiefs when the British was there. As it was yesterday, so it is today. No African nation was colonized the same. No African nation have the same experience in colonization. We can boast of having similar identity before colonization, but after colonization, what we experienced became different. Let me teach you, pay attention. When the British stepped into Uganda, we knew what they did in Buganda. Kabaka Shua II had they forced him to sign treaty. But we know that it's not all part of Uganda that experienced what Buganda experienced in that part of the kingdom where Kabaka Shua had the authority in that sovereignty. Different experience, but where you will understand it better is in West Africa, specifically in that Nigeria. What happened in Nigeria? You know, most times I use Nigeria to teach, not that I do not recognize other people from our part of Akebulan in East Africa, but because 70% of my audience constitute Nigerians. So I like using them to pontificate so the rest of us can relate using their own experience. You have to understand that the reason why we fight wars in Africa is not because we are wicked people. No. I told you, we are products of psychological colonized inheritance. Let me explain. If you go to Nigeria, you have different ethnic group. And I want to let you know today that different ethnic group in Nigeria had different experience of colonization. Nigeria as a country was not colonized the same. That is why they find it difficult to work together. They find it difficult to work together because they were not colonized the same. Let me teach you, pay attention. You see, the approach that Lugard, the one you call a Lugard, is not my lord. The approach he brought in the north was different from the approach he brought in the west, different from the approach he brought in the east. Why? Different people had different experience. Let me teach you. For the northern part of Nigeria, what they had was a perceived traditional authority. Perceived traditional authority. Because before the British came to the northern part of Nigeria, you already knew what was there. The emir was there. The Maji, the Madawaki, the Waziri, the Galadima, the second Rowa, the second power, the second father. They were there. So they used the structure to rule the people. So the people were saying the emir, but behind the emir was a British governor. That was a perceived authority, perceived traditional authority. That was the northern part of Nigeria experience of colonization. The western part of Nigeria had a different kind of experience. You need to understand that before colonization, the West had what was called the balance system. The Alafin was there. The Basholun was there. The Oyomesi was there. The Ogbeni confraternity was there. The Ora Onaka Kamfo was there. But the Alafin was not authoritarian in nature. He was not allowed to do whatever he wants to do. He was not authoritarian. He was not all powerful. In fact, when he messes up, he's being forced to open the ballot egg and commit suicide. But what did the British did? When the colonial master came, in order to use the king, the Alafin, he gave him more power than was needed and necessary. Gave him more power than the people wanted, so he can use him. So the western part of Nigeria experienced a strengthened monarchical system. They experienced a strengthened monarchical system. Not for their own good, but for the British good. Different experience from the north and the west. What about the Easterners? Predominantly the Igbos. What was their experience? The Igbos did not experience a strengthened traditional authority. Neither did they experience a strengthened monarchical structure. What they experienced was they experienced an artificial authority and a disruption of their social construct. What does that mean? Artificial authority in the sense that the people whom the British met, the opera, the offer title holders, the Ezemo, the 8th grade, the Umuada, they were abandoned. They were not used to rule the people. They created their own system, the warrant chiefs. The warrant chiefs became the authority in the eastern part of Nigeria, created by the British. That is a perceived artificial authority which disrupted the people's social construct. So both the north, the west, and the east had a different colonial experience. That is why after independence they cannot relate, because they experienced different colonization. As it was yesterday, so it is today. That experience that they both perceived is exactly what their present government is using to rule them, because they learned from the colonial master. In the northern part of Nigeria, when they want to play with their emotion, what do the government do? The government appeal to the emirs, because the northerners perceived what? They perceived traditional authority, royal to the monarchical system. When they want to appeal to the west, what do your government do? They strengthen the monarchs in the west and use them to collect votes from the people from the west. When they want to deal with the easterners, who are predominantly Igbos, they don't go to the monarch. They don't go to the monarch because the people will not listen to the monarch. What do? They use that system, that same structure that the British use, which is warrant chiefs. Hence, they create city boys movement. The city boys in your today's world were what was called the warrant chiefs in yesterday's world. So the boys you see today as city boys, they were the warrant chiefs when the British was there. As it was yesterday, so it is today. Nothing changed. The same system, the same structure, the same process. The people must understand the game they play. Only then can the people be fully liberated. The voice of Akebulan, the modern day town crier, has spoken. I am giving you their system. Know it and be free. Africa, wisdom now, water. Akebulan, wisdom is the principle here.